you're not going to get rich renting out your time. Even lawyers and doctors who are charging $300, $400, $500 an hour, they're not getting rich because their lifestyle is slowly ramping up along with their income, and they're not saving enough. They just don't have that ability to retire. So the first thing you have to do is you have to own a piece of a business. You need to have equity, either as an owner, an investor, shareholder, or a brand that you're building that accrues to you to gain your financial freedom.
Yeah, and I was really fascinated by another thing that you were bringing up about working for yourself, that you feel that in the future, whether it's 50 or 100 years from now, virtually everyone is going to be working for themselves. And I believe the way you put it is that the information age is going to reverse the industrial age.
Yeah. If you go back to hunter-gatherer times, how we evolved, we basically worked for ourselves. We communicated and cooperated within tribes, but each hunter, each gatherer stood on their own and then combined their resources with the family unit. But there was no boss hierarchy where you're like the third middle manager down. In the farming age, we became a little bit more hierarchical as we had to run farms, but even those were still mostly family farms. It's industrial work with factories that sort of created this model of thousands of people working together on one thing and having bosses and schedules and times to show up. The reality is, if you have to go, I don't care how rich you are, I don't care whether you're like a top Wall Street banker, if you have to go, if somebody can tell you when to be at work and what to wear and how to behave, you're not a free person. You're not actually rich. So we're in this model now where we think it's all about employment and jobs. And intrinsic in that is that I have to work for somebody else. But the information age is breaking that down. So Ronald Coase is an economist who has this Coase theorem, a very famous theorem, but it basically just talks about why is a company the size that it is? Why is a company one person instead of 10 people, instead of 100, instead of 1,000? And it has to do with the internal transaction costs versus the external transaction costs. Let's say I want to do something, let's say I'm building a house and I need someone to come in and provide the lumber. I'm a developer, right? Do I want that to be part of my company, or do I want that to be an external provider? A lot of it just depends on how hard it is to do that transaction with someone externally versus internally. If it's too hard to keep doing the contract every time externally, I'll bring that in-house. If it's easy to do externally and it's a one-off kind of thing, I'd rather keep it out of the house. Well, information technology is making it easier and easier to do these transactions externally. It's becoming much easier to communicate with people. Gig economy, I can send you small amounts of money. I can hire you through an app. I can rate you afterwards. So we're seeing an atomization of the firm. We're seeing the optimal size of the firm shrinking. It's most obvious in Silicon Valley. Tons and tons of startups constantly coming up and shaving off little pieces of businesses from large companies and turning them into huge markets. So what looked like the small little vacation rental market on Craigslist is now suddenly blown up into Airbnb. This is one example.
That's a great example.
But what I think we're going to see is, whether it's 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, high quality work will be available. We're not talking about now driving an Uber. We're talking about super high quality work will be available in a gig fashion, where you'll wake up in the morning, your phone will buzz, and you'll have 5 different jobs from people who have worked with you in the past or have been referred to you. It's kind of like how Hollywood already works a little bit with how they organize for a project. You decide whether to take the project or not. The contract is right there on the spot. You get paid a certain amount. You get rated every day or every week. You get the money delivered. And then when you're done working, you turn it off and you go to Tahiti or wherever you want to spend the next 3 months. And I think the smart people have already started figuring out that the internet enables this, and they're starting to work more and more remotely on their own schedule, on their own time, on their own place, with their own friends, in their own way. And that's actually how we are the most productive. So the information revolution, by making it easier to communicate, connect, and cooperate, is allowing us to go back to working for ourselves. And that is my ultimate dream. Even when I run a company and I have employees, I always tell those people, hey, I'm going to help you start your company when you're ready, because I think that's the highest calling. Maybe not everybody will get there, but it would be fine if we were even working a 10-person company or 20-person company is way better than working in a 1,000-person company or 10,000-person company. So this idea that we're all factory-like cogs in a machine who are specialized and have to do things by rote memorization or instruction is going to go away, and we're going to go back to being small groups of creative bands of individuals setting out to do missions. And when those missions are done, we collect our money, we get rated, and then we rest and reassess until we're ready for the next sprint.
Has there ever been a study done on happiness as it regards to the size of companies?
Not that I'm aware, but to me it's obvious. It's just obvious. The smaller the company, the happier you're going to be, the more human your relations are, the less you have rules to operate under, the more flexible, the more creative, the more you be treated like a human just because you're able to do multiple things.
Yeah. This brings me to what is a subject that keeps getting brought up nowadays is universal basic income with the oncoming apocalypse of automation. This is how it's being portrayed by Andrew Yang, who's running for president. I sat down and talked with him about it. It's very compelling. And he's a very smart guy, and he's an entrepreneur himself. And when he starts talking about automation and how it's going to just eliminate massive amounts of jobs and leave people stranded, what do you? When I know you're a guy who thinks about the future, and
I'm going to take the unpopular point of view on this. I think it's a non-solution to a non-problem. And I mean that in the sense that automation has been happening since the dawn of time. Man, when electricity came along, that put a lot of people out of work.
Did it?
Right? A lot of people carrying buckets of water and lighting lamps and all those kinds of things.
And this was the concern with factories as well.
Yeah,
right?
Everything. Literally every single thing that comes
Even
along.
the printing press.
Absolutely.
Right? Sure.
And what it does is it frees people up for new creative work. So the question is not, is automation going to eliminate jobs? There is no finite number of jobs. We're not like sitting around dividing up the same jobs that were around since the Stone Age. So obviously new jobs are being created, and they're usually better jobs, more creative jobs. So the question is, how quickly is this transition going to happen? And what kinds of jobs will be eliminated, and what kinds of jobs will be created? It's impossible looking forward to predict what kinds of jobs will be created. If I told you 10 years ago that podcaster was going to be a job, or that playing video games is going to be a job, or commentating on video games is going to be a job, you would have laughed me out of the room. Those are nonsense jobs, but yet here we are. So society will always create new jobs. Civilization creates new jobs, but it's impossible to predict what those jobs are. So the question is, how quickly is that transition happening? Well, the reality is, even though everybody keeps talking about this automation apocalypse, we're at a record low unemployment. Explain that. Where's the transition?
Donald Trump. That's how it...
All I'm saying is it's I don't see it in the numbers. I don't see it actually happening. The question is, how quickly can you retrain people? So it's an education problem. The problem with UBI, there's a couple of problems with UBI. One is you're creating a slippery slide transfer straight into socialism, right? The moment people can start voting themselves money combined with a democracy, then it's just a matter of time before the bottom 51 votes themselves everything in the top 49.
Yeah.